Hello, Guyana. Greetings to those of you who are here and those in the diaspora who live overseas in the different nations. This broadcast is being done of necessity. By now, many of you are familiar with my name and with my face. And you should also be familiar with my position and my stance regarding the electoral process in this country and regarding what I consider to be someone's lack of, either intentionally or unintentionally, lack of regard for our constitutional processes. If you do not mind, kindly let me know whether you can hear and see clearly. Additionally, please share this broadcast with someone else because persons are not necessarily normally notified when I am live. But I must, in keeping with my conscience and in keeping with my duty, more than anything else, my duty to ensure that those who are of the faith do not join the band of people who speak ignorantly. That's the main reason why I do these broadcasts regarding elections. Because although you have an interest in political affairs, you must be aware of the fact that you just cannot follow crowds because they're saying the same thing. I have been fortunate to be hated by many. And it's a wonderful thing. I'm not the kind of person who has any interest. That's why I do not run for any political office. I don't want people to vote for me and choose me and decide that I should lead them in anything. And that is why I can speak with such a clear conscience on a consistent basis. And that's why I shall continue to do so. Regardless of how blue, pink, or white in the face people become. Let me hasten to let you know that during this broadcast, or maybe on the rebroadcast, probably on YouTube in the comment section, you shall see persons labeling me a racist. And that is actually laughable. It's laughable because I've never thought, maybe I was too naive, but I never thought that my Guyanese people in general, many of them, I never imagined that they could be that shallow and absolutely stupid. Because if someone expresses a view on an electoral matter, and persons, I promise you will see them saying this, persons then label you racist, it's obvious as to why we are in this electoral plight. Because of the minds of the kind of people we have who vote and who lead. Politics in Guyana thrives on ignorance. Politicians in Guyana, Mama Megan, good to see you. Politicians in Guyana function best with an ignorant electorate. It is just frightening to consider the minds of those who are in positions of authority in this country to lead our people. Something is seriously wrong when persons attempt to ascend to office, and in that quest to ascend to office, they throw away, they discard all or most principles that point to common sense. But some of you fail to realize that during the election period or the campaign period, they call it silly season. And I've lived to see why it's called silly season. Because nobody with sense will engage himself in being pawns to the politicians, especially in this country. Elections were had on the 2nd of March, 2020, according to the Gregorian calendar. We are in April, mid-April, and no one has been sworn in as the president of Guyana. Guyana has a population of a little more than 750,000 people. And almost or more than 6 weeks in, Guyana does not have a president who has been sworn in by the Chancellor of the Judiciary. This, of course, synchronizes with the prophetic word that Yahweh gave me to give to President Granger, that if he did not do what he should have done, his ascending to office or his experience in the election, this one, would be difficult. If you don't call this difficult, I don't know what is. Somebody please invite Apostle Joshua Bissoon to the broadcast as well. Let him know I'm live. Guyana does not have a president who has been sworn in just yet. What Guyana has is what I call, or observe to be, political and judicial, meaning using the court, masquerades. Now, Madam Phyllis Jordan is the first one I want to address, because Phyllis Jordan is the only candidate, presidential candidate, who, as far as I'm aware, said that she was going to campaign on truth and on righteousness to be restored in Guyana and the rest of it, the People's Republic Party. And Phyllis Jordan would have found herself in the middle of a political catastrophe. In that, most of you who follow elections in Guyana saw what happened, what transpired. And Phyllis Jordan began to speak frequently about events surrounding the election. Mind you, I said that she's the only candidate, that campaigned on Christianity being the platform on which she's going to stand. This same woman, deceptively, after my giving redress to what she said, did a broadcast to say that when I said people were asking for their vote to count or to be counted, Phyllis Jordan said that that is not what people are asking for. They were saying their votes did not count, meaning it was not given the value it should have or the respect it should have been given. Thereafter, I got a photo of the Guardians of Democracy, of their banner, while they were on stake out, watching the containers holding the ballot boxes. And on their banner, it plainly stated, every vote must be counted. And they were shouting for a recount of the votes, while saying the vote was not counted. The Christian thing to do by a woman who was supposed to be, if she'd won, a Christian president of Guyana, the Christian thing to do would have been to acknowledge that she lied or she was misguiding the people, because politicians like to say they lie. So she misrepresented the truth. She could have found any nice way to say it. But she would have acknowledged, if she were godly, that she deceived persons by suggesting in a broadcast that I was saying what was not true, when she was the one who was saying what wasn't true, by the way. Fine. The second thing that Madam Phyllis Jordan did is when the fiasco began and the confusion began to arise, Phyllis Jordan said that she received statements of poll from a major political party. And when she observed what she had from the major political party, it did not coincide, and that's, I guess, around region 4, the region in the fire. It did not coincide with what the returning officer was announcing. Phyllis Jordan, to this day, has not said which party and who from that party gave her those statements of poll. Instead, she said that she would not announce that because it is best served or reserved for if there is an election petition, then if there's an investigation launched, she will then disclose such. Let me make this pellucid to all of you. If Phyllis Jordan follows Ephesians 5:11, I think she's Christian, she should follow the Bible. It says you must have no part in the unfruitful works of darkness. I think rigging is darkness. Do you think so? Do you think that rigging an election is something that is dark and evil? I would like to think so. I think cheating is darkness. I know there's a delay in the broadcast, but I want some of you to commit yourselves by typing. Do you believe that rigging an election is an act of darkness? Do you believe that cheating an election is dark? Is it a work of darkness? Is it an evil act? Ephesians chapter 5 verse 11. Somebody could type it so she can see where I'm quoting from. Thank you. Somebody said rigging is darkness. Do you believe that it is? One person has answered so far. Okay. I know there's a delay, so I would take my time to wait for you to answer me. Ephesians 5:11 states that the church should not be a partaker or involved in the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather, I'm quoting from Ephesians chapter 5 verse 11 from Madam Preacher Phyllis Jordan, but rather you should reprove it. What does reprove it mean? Reprove means to publicly put someone to shame. Not to secretly do it. It means to embarrass a person with the intention to make them change their wicked behavior. It says you must expose it. Sister Janet, good to see you. Phyllis Jordan said that she had been given statements of poll by a major political party. If she was given statements of poll by a major political party, then upon scrutinizing what she had, it did not match what was being displayed or announced. Phyllis Jordan has refused for weeks, over a month, to say who gave it to her. When Ephesians 5:11, she said she stands for righteousness. She said she stands for truth. She said she shall be true to the truth. If you are true to the truth, Madam Phyllis Jordan, how can you not be true to Ephesians 5:11, which I should think is true? That you must have no part to play in the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather you should expose it. You should reprove it. You should expose it. You shouldn't hide it. So if you know that you have in your possession something that can expose rigging, which is darkness, which is wicked, which is evil, why have you kept it up until today? Yet you're saying, and that's when I realized that I have cause to speak to this woman again. Because Phyllis Jordan had the gall, after all of that I would have said and done publicly, to say she is seeking for preachers. We're the preachers with an unbiased voice. So what was mine? What bias did I ever show? I told you all my hands are clean. There's no dye in my finger. None. There's no dye. There's no indelible ink in my hand. I have never voted. So when I open my mouth, I'm not talking for anybody. I understand clearly that whenever you've put your hand in that ink, you are announcing that you endorse a party, you want that person to lead you, the party to lead you, and therefore your bias should be, because that's what voting is about, towards that party. I have not voted for any, so I have a right to talk about all. My conscience is clean, and so are my hands. Shalom, no, good to see you. How can you have a Christian leader pretending as if there's not an unbiased voice in Guyana speaking from the 3rd of March or before the 3rd of March? Since 2016, I've been addressing the president. Now this woman has the nerve to say she's looking for unbiased preachers to speak. What would you consider to be unbiased? Because I like to think that being unbiased means exactly what I said to you all from the beginning. Anyone who followed me from the very day that all the elections nonsense began can recall I said something very clear to you all. Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, has far more power than the politicians are telling you, than the commissioners of GECOM are telling you. And it's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate for these politicians and commissioners of GECOM to know how much authority GECOM has and make you pawns, have you screaming and shouting like fools all the time without telling you that many of your cries are without legal merit. I have been saying that the Guyana Elections Commission is the only entity that can legally determine who wins an election. Nobody else. In terms of the initial act. The court cannot override the Guyana Elections Commission. And determine who wins an election. Then tell GECOM, these are our results, now go ahead and announce it. There's no entity on the planet that has more electoral power to function in terms of election than GECOM. I said it to you all from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and all these days of March, that if you have any sense, whatever, you will not at any time fall for the deception of these people. Further, I observed, I would like to think people began to get emotional and riled. So, APNU AFC and the PPP politicians were both observed saying that they won the election before the Guyana Elections Commission made any declaration. To this day, and I'll get to that, The Guyana Elections Commission has not made any electoral declaration. None. The last thing that happened regarding declarations, which is an announcement of a result, was Region 4. No more. The Chief Elections Officer has not made any declaration about elections. The chairman of GECOM has not made any declaration of the results of election. So votes were counted, because if you're going to ask for a recount, it means votes were counted. I am disheartened, but no longer surprised, that Guyanese who went to school, our country was once touted as the most literate, among the most literate people in the world. Yes, we had at one time 98 or 99% literacy in Guyana. Yes, Guyanese were considered among the most literate people in the entire world. And look at where we've come to today. We're simply reading. That's all it takes. Hopefully. Reading. Because certain things are self-explanatory. Simply reading what our laws state. Guyanese can't do any longer. They prefer to be lazy and listen to politicians, deceive them repeatedly, and then after the election they say, well, you're always tricking me. I don't do politics, but you fall for it all the time. How could APNU AFC and PPP, Basil Williams, for example, said he won the election. Jagdiu said they won the election. Irfan Ali said they won the election. How do we have persons making an announcement? Ali said they won the election. And at the same time he said only GECOM could say who won the election. So what are we doing? Do you not understand already what you're dealing with here? How could the same people who tell you that only GECOM, Guyana Election Commission, can announce the results of the election as being valid, and they turn around and ahead of GECOM say, well, I've won? And some of you, who will end up calling me racist, of course, have followed them. I continue to announce, no one has the authority in this nation to say that they would have won any election unless the Guyana Elections Commission makes that announcement. Not Region 4 returning officer. When all 10 returning officers would have declared the results, there is still no announcement of a winner unless the CEO is furnished with the right documents. Then he gives it to the commissioners, the group including the chairman. Then the chairman gives the result to the chancellor of the judiciary to swear the president in. Until the chancellor of the judiciary has that document in hand to say, this is the person, the candidate, who's the president, elections are not over. I must issue a disclaimer here. I am only speaking to people with common sense and wisdom. If you are a confounded fool, I'm not talking to you. I would ignore every stupid comment. You could be from the PPP Civic. You can be from APNU AFC. You can be from Phyllis Jordan's party. You can be from any TNM, whatever it is. As long as your statements are reasonable and your question is pointed in the direction of wisdom, I can entertain you. But idiocy, I don't entertain. And as soon as I said that, Maureen Band came on. GECOM rigged the election. Who can you trust? That's exactly the kind of people I tell you that I would not entertain. Because Guyanese are saying that GECOM has rigged the election. GECOM includes a chairman. The Guyana Elections include commissions, include 7 commissioners. Well, the chairman is a commissioner by extension, but it includes 6 commissioners, 3 from the People Progressive Party and 3 from APNU AFC. Robeson Ben, Says Gunraj, Bibi Shadiq are the 3 commissioners from the Guyana Elections Commission on the PPP side. You have Trotman, Vincent Alexander, and Norton. I think it's not Norton. I'll get his name in a minute. Corbin, from the APNU FC side. So there's 6 commissioners. When somebody so stupid comes here to say that GECOM has rigged the election, you have announced to me that GECOM is a body, has rigged the elections. That is how foolish Guyanese adults are, involved in politics, that is, trying to make political statements. Right, Corbin, correct. Thank you so much, Alison. Now, if GECOM would have rigged the election, then it also means by extension that Region 1, Region 2, Region 3, Region 4, up to Region 10, all of the officers that functioned within the electoral process functioned under the umbrella and auspices of GECOM, especially returning officers and presiding officers. So they all rigged. That is how insane and unfortunately stupid people are in this country. Now let me continue. We have got laws. Contrary to what many Guyanese think, we have laws. And of course, I said again, I'll be called racist. And I'll be called one who's supporting APNU AFC because some people don't hear well. And I must say this to you yet again. If it were the PPP who would have been in power and APNU AFC would have been acting like the PPP Civic, I would have said the same thing to APNU AFC. And some of you can't do it because the conscience isn't that clear. I don't care what political party you're from. If ever you're going to seek to circumvent, to go around and bend laws in Guyana just because you want to appease somebody, I have a problem with you. Because there's no limit. As long as you begin to act outside of or beyond the Constitution of this country, which includes or supports the Representation of the People Act, as long as you begin to act in manners that don't support the law, you come into problems. Because the law is a restraining article or entity. The law binds you so that you're able to function within certain parameters. The minute you take that down and walk through the gate and decide, okay, then I know what the law says, but I'll do something else, and I'll do something else, and I'll do something else. The minute you venture down that path, you enter or open Pandora's box. You open a box of trouble, which is exactly what Guyana is facing now and shall face. Let me address where things began to go downhill. The PPP Civic approached the court, the High Court, seeking redress to be given to what they perceive to be Mingo's unlawful actions. And the Chief Justice would have given her ruling without there being any electoral petition. No petition was filed, saying the process is finished, we're going to file a petition because the entire electoral process is finished. And we're now filing a petition. Nope. No, we forget about that. We're going to seek to have the court interfere with GECOM's functioning. That's what the PPP wanted. The court will intervene during the electoral process, and the court will make a ruling to instruct GECOM. I said to you all from the beginning that, like the court, there is more weight in terms of power that GECOM has than the GECOM commissioners are telling you, and than even the president and opposition leader are telling you. So what do we have? We have the court intervening in the electoral process and giving instruction. Okay, fine. When the instruction were given, I said, okay, fine. The Chief Justice said what she had to say. Let's abide by what she said then, which is Article 84. When she also gave a clear instruction that nobody who's called an observer, or no one, that's with Phyllis Jordan again. Phyllis Jordan is now saying it's red herrings. When I said to her, there's nothing called verification process in the law. You cannot tell any returning officer to verify anything, because to ask a returning officer to verify statements of poll is to say that whatever the parties have, and they said they went and got it themselves. They didn't say they were given it. And I'll show you from the law. The party said they send their people out to get it. Many parties said that. They asked cousin. They asked friends. And they were given photographs and the rest of it. Guyanese critic was one who was saying, oh, people are out there taking photographs and send photographs to him. I'll show you what the law says. Because the minute people, and the Chief Justice said it, the minute persons could tell the officer who is vested with the power to ascertain the total number of votes cast, the minute persons could tell the officer, you're wrong. No, my number is different from yours. Change that. You are asking for chaos. Because if somebody in the room wants to rig, they can tell the officer to change his number. I hope you get the point. The Chief Justice said nobody must instruct the officer what to do. The officer does what he has to do, given it's within the confines of the law. As soon as he got back and he began to talk, Yearwood from Annog was accosting the regional officer, returning officer for Region 4. It is live. It was live. It was broadcast. We all saw it. He, Yearwood, violated, acted in contempt, but he wasn't charged. He accosted a returning officer. And nobody saw that. Nobody saw what Yearwood did. He totally disregarded what the Chief Justice said. Let me go further. An act was taken to have the Chief Justice cite and deem guilty Mingo, the returning officer of Region 4, for contempt because he said he didn't follow her instructions. Let me help you. The Chief Justice's response was, you're wasting the court's time. Does that tell you that she agreed with what they said? You decide. Things went awry the minute the Chief Justice of this country sought to engage the chairman of GECOM without the commissioners of GECOM and asked that chairman, along with the president and the opposition leader, to agree to an undertaking which is a legally binding agreement to recount the votes. The Chief Justice should have never done that, because the votes have to be counted based on something. Where is the petition? Did the Chief Elections Officer see all 10 returning officers' reports and file his report based on them? No. So how could a request be made for a recount without giving the CEO a chance to say the elections, these numbers are flawed? Have the commissioners met? Did they meet to scrutinize the results that were given to them? No. So how could the commissioners say the results are flawed? If the commissioners of the Guyana Elections Commission, 6 of them, never had a meeting to scrutinize the statements of poll, how could they say the elections were flawed? Guess how? By people saying it was flawed. That is how sick our Guyanese people have become in their mentality regarding politics. That people, including American ambassador and all of them, could just threaten, if the elections are done in any manner or anybody sworn in without fairness, we will sanction you. Oh my God, let's change the laws now because we want to be sanctioned. Guyana, even if it is done on a most apparently humble and quiet basis, as long as it is illegal, it is illegal. Where are the pockets of evidence to show that, number one, the chairman of GECOM, the CEO of GECOM, and the commissioners of GECOM have scrutinized the statements of poll? Where is it? Says Gunrad from the PPP Civic said that up until a few weeks ago, they still have not. They have still not seen the statements of poll. Let me address what somebody is saying. Am I seeking to validate Guyana's elections? No. What I'm seeking to do is to ask questions of those who are enlightened. I'm asking you the questions. According to the law, not your opinion, not what you observe to be unlawful, according to the law. First of all, let me ask you, which one of you on this broadcast, let me start with Gavin Reed. Gavin Reed, I'll call your name as I see you. Let me help you somehow to be identified. Gavin Reed, were you a returning officer or a presiding officer for any of the 10 regions? Let's see if Gavin Reed has the fortitude of a man to answer. Let me show you how people get run off broadcast pretty quickly, or how they go in a corner like a snake and go under a rock to hide. Gavin Reed, in all that you're saying, let me know, announce now, were you, Mr. Reed, any of functioning as a returning officer or a presiding officer for any of the 10 regions in Guyana? I'll begin with Gavin Reed. Then I'll come by you one at a time. See, Gavin Reed can't answer. And I want you to read his answer when he gives it, or I'll read it for you. Okay, he's asked, look at the response. Do I need to be? Look at the response. Because the only people who prepare statements of poll, the person would be the presiding officers. Then they give Form 23A to returning officer. Gavin, obviously, okay, OC. Gavin obviously did not function as a presiding officer or a returning officer, but he has information that elections were rigged. That's exactly what I talk about. That's exactly what I'm talking to you about. The minds of our people, many, not all, it is so polluted and perverted that they cannot even reason with common sense. Therefore, their reasoning is absolutely stupid. There is no law that states that whoever announces this person cheated is right. The laws, I've never seen the law function in that manner. What I know the law states is this: present evidence. That's what the law says. You file an affidavit, you present your evidence in an election petition, and then there's an investigation. You bypass all of that. And you use Facebook Live to say that people cheated. That's how much sense you people have. The world saw that they cheated. How? Indira Matthews, now your turn. Did you function as a presiding officer or returning officer? Indira Matthews is next. Let me see if she has any more manhood than Gavin, because he doesn't have any as far as I'm concerned. So let me see if Indira can answer. There you go. Neither. So you have people who had absolutely no legal authority. They weren't even in the room to count the ballots, but they know elections are rigged. Let me read for you the law of Guyana, please, because some of you need to hear law. Who gives? Oh, this is good. The Representation of the People Act, I'm reading. Part 90. Let's read part 95. Or from part 93. The presiding officer. Mingo is not a presiding officer. So let me just help some of y'all who keep calling Mingo's name. And I don't defend any one of them. I did not vote. I have no interest in voting for people in Guyana because none of them functions with integrity and honesty to lead me. But by Yahweh's will, they're in position. But I would not choose for any one of them to lead me. None. You choose, that's why you have to say the foolishness you're saying now. Section 93. Let me read this for you. I'm reading the law for you. And fools will hear me read the law and still say something else. I'll show you this afternoon how stupid they are. Section 93. 1. The presiding officer. Mingo is a returning officer, not a presiding officer. And I hope somebody just heard what I said. Mingo is a returning officer. So he has to be given something by somebody. There is a presiding officer. Let me read what happens before anything gets to Mingo. 93.1. The presiding officer, as soon as is practicable, after the closing of the poll, the presiding officer, in the presence of such persons entitled under Section 89(1)(b to be present, I shall attend. Look at this. Count the number of spoiled ballot papers and tendered ballot papers, if any, and place them in separate special envelopes supplied for that purpose. Indicate thereon the number of spoiled ballot papers and tendered ballot papers and seal the envelopes. Let me read part B. The presiding officer shall count the used tendered ballot papers without unfolding them and place them back in the special envelope supplied for that purpose. Indicate thereon the number of the used tendered ballot papers. Okay. The presiding officer, part E, shall record the number of ballot papers tendered and ballot papers received by the presiding officer, issued to the electors, right, and spoiled in the ballot paper account and tendered ballot paper account form 23. F, open the ballot box and empty its contents upon a table. The presiding officer is doing this now. G, distribute tally sheets to assistant presiding officer, the poll clerk, and the duly appointed candidates and polling agents. Presiding officer, sort out the ballot papers on the basis of lists for which the votes have been cast, and count the number of votes part J recorded for each list of candidates on his tally sheet, giving full opportunity for those present to examine each ballot paper. Thus far, where did you hear returning officer? Nowhere. So all of these counting is occurring. And the returning officer is nowhere in the picture. Candidates, representatives of different parties, are there. Okay. So in reference to Madam Phyllis Jordan, who can make a statement about GECOM, if she did not have, from her People's Republic Party, individuals at every polling station, how could she know that GECOM is being compromised? How could she speak to a process that she was not present at? And I'm asking anyone who has something to say here, were you present? Let me go to part 9. After the completion of the counting, the presiding officer shall complete the ballot paper count and tendered ballot paper count in Form 23. The statement of poll, now you're hearing this terminology, the statement of poll in Form 23A. The presiding officer completes that and prepare and certify a sufficient number of copies of the same statement of poll for distribution as follows. So let me tell you the people who are receiving statement of poll now from the presiding officer. This is good. The returning officer. Every returning officer is given statements of poll by presiding officers at the polling station. That's the first thing. The second thing, the assistant presiding officer also has the statement of poll. Form 23A. Part C, to such of duly appointed candidates or the polling agents as are present. So whoever is present, not sent for something, whichever candidate is present, or the polling agents are present, they receive also. They receive. Oh, Gavin Reed now says it's an opinion. That's how stupid you are. You said they cheated. That's not an opinion. That's an accusation. Get your dictionary and check before you talk back to me. That is how foolish you are coming on the broadcast. It is not an opinion. It is an accusation. Know the difference. Now I've begun to read the law. You're backpedaling. Don't backpedal. Keep coming. So the returning officer has a statement of poll. The same figures in that statement of poll, or those statements of poll, is supposed to be given to the assistant presiding officer. It must be given to duly appointed candidates or polling agents that are present. So if the PPP Civic and the APNU AFC have people at every polling station, all of them have the same document. All. D, the chief elections officer also receives the statement of poll from the presiding officer, not from the returning officer. But many of you are absolutely ignorant of the electoral process, but you're following what Jack Dion, whoever telling you all. You have no clue about election law, but you have something to say. The statement of poll, Part 9A, prepared in accordance with subsection 9, shall be posted in a conspicuous or an open place outside of polling places as conclusive evidence of the result of the election for that polling place unless there is a recount of the votes. The presiding officer shall then, Part 10, place the seal envelope containing the counted and rejected ballot papers in the ballot box, the secure and seal with his seal, and with the seals of such duly appointed candidates and polling agents. So all the parties present, they could seal. Let me stop at this point, because the point I want to make is this. Where in that do you see a returning officer being the person who gives himself figures to work with? Secondly, how many presiding officers have come forward from the 840-something polling stations in Region 4, since I want to talk about Region 4, to say Mingo has announced what we don't have? How many of them? You have 849. How many of them have come forward? I would like to think that if the elections were rigged, the presiding officers who give the returning officers the statements should be the first ones to say, hey, commissioners, we have a problem. These returning officers are saying what we didn't say. Where are those? If there's anybody who should say that Mingo or whoever else go cheated, it should be the presiding officers, because they're the ones who give him the statements of poll. Note what I said to you. The chief elections officer also has statements of poll given to him, not by the returning officer, by the presiding officer. By all presiding officers, he has his. Have you been able to compare the chief election officer's report with that of the returning officer's report? No, because the process didn't even get there yet, but we're in court. And you want to talk to me and to Guyanese people about transparency? How can a process be transparent if it's incomplete? It never had a chance to be complete in the first place. If this extensive rigging took place, where are the presiding officers? Where are y'all? So now let me make the final point. According to the law, according to the law, according to the law, any recounting of votes must be done by the returning officer. He supervises. I am now hearing persons seeking to fire certain returning officers. No, we don't want you. Bring somebody else. Do you understand what I said to you regarding people who seek to operate outside of the law? So Shiv Kumar asks a very important question. Why was they trying, or it should be they, why were they trying to block the recount? Again, opinion would say, if you try to block a recount, it means that you know you lose. And that is juvenile opinion. Note again, Mr. As you ask the question, I did not vote. I have no interest in any political party. I have interest in the law being upheld. Get that clear. If you can't get that clear, then I'll have a conversation with you. But I'll answer your question because I perceive, maybe, you want to have an honest answer. If there is an effort made by the chairman of GECOM, by the president, by the leader of the opposition, if there's an effort made by them, and they say, listen, let us recount the votes, and GECOM say, good, let's recount the vote, and there is no ruling or no petition or no request made for votes to be recounted, how can they be recounted? How? How are you going to recount something if the chief elections officer did not even have an opportunity to say, this is my report based on the statements that were given to me by the presiding officer? What are you recounting? So Maureen Ban is, and I would not speak to what's being repeated every so often on the media because it's been out there enough. He used a spreadsheet. He used a spreadsheet. He did not use statement of poll, he used a spreadsheet. That's the kind of idiocy that you have to deal with, as I said before. Because the question is, and the Chief Justice answered, what method of publication should he use? The answer was clear. 8. Don't say Mingo use anything. 8 returning officers use spreadsheet. Again, that's how stupid you are. And I'll call you stupid because you've exhibited enough for me to call you that. You are an idiot. 8 other returning officers, according to an affidavit that the Chief Justice read to the whole country. 8, not Mingo. Mingo can't be 8 people. 8 other returning officers use spreadsheets. What was your objection then? What was your objection? Are you that daft, or you're just making a special effort to be daft on my broadcast? Because it seems as if you're making an effort. You cannot be naturally stupid like that. All of this was ventilated in the public. This is no news to you. This is in the print media. It was on social media, everywhere. That the Chief Justice said, if 8 other returning officers use spreadsheet, what is wrong if Mingo use it? What's the problem with that? And you have the nerve to come and say he uses spreadsheet. I say to you again, because it seems as if you have a comprehension issue. If the presiding officers give to the returning officers statements of poll, they give the same statement of poll to the candidates. They give the same statements of poll to the CEO. They give the same statement of poll, the same thing, to the deputy or the assistant. How in the world do we have 849 people so quiet? Okay, here's my thing. Let's have 500 returning officers, presiding officers say that Mingo cheated. That's all I'm saying. Because they would know what they have. Did we have 500? Okay. Did we have 400 presiding officers who gave Region 4 returning officer the same in the poll? Did we have 400 of them saying, this man is what we didn't have? Yudish Matidin, you keep asking if you can call. You can call me when I finish with the broadcast. However, you can hear my principle, and you can hear my platform and my position. If your call is to accuse anybody with information, I don't have a conversation with you. It's over. Yudish Matidin, I'm done with the broadcast. You can call me. If you're calling to say that I am supporting APNU AFC, our conversation is over, because apparently you have a hearing problem. If you're calling for us to have an honest conversation, an exchange of thoughts, you can talk. So let me close with this. You now have GECOM seeking to engage in a recount. And if anybody got mad, you'll surely get mad now for real. If anybody is going to engage in a recount at this time, it would never be a simple recount. Never. And you can get as mad as you want. Because first of all, it is not a legal recount. GECOM commissioners cannot just decide to recount the ballots. On what ground? That's the point I'm making to you. On what premise? Even Lowenfield is wrong. Because he has to give you the reason why he's going to recount the ballots. What's the reason? Did any presiding officer say that the majority, more than 50% of them, say we have got discrepancies here? So you should check this out again? I have seen no such report from presiding officers. So how are we going to engage in a recount for a process that is incomplete? I keep asking you that, nobody answered as far yet. What are you recounting? If you say that the process was never completed, how are you recounting something that's incomplete? Be as stupid as you want, because you cannot answer the question with a straight face. How can you recount something in an incomplete process? My question to GECOM further is this: at what stage are you in the process? So O.C. Weeks has answered. He said it's not a recount. He said it's not a recount. It's a restarting of the count. See what I told you, when you go beyond the ambits of law, what happens? As long as you go beyond the law, you begin to invent all kinds of laws. So that's why I asked the question in the topic. Where is the new constitution? Because I'm reading from an article here, or law, that is supported by the constitution. So I'm waiting to see the new constitution that GECOM has written, because I haven't seen it yet. Where are we in the process of election? Because all 10 returning officers have declared their results. Therefore, there's a next step that follows. Are we at that step? OC Weeks says, no, we're not at that step, so we're going back to counting. I'd like to submit to you that you cannot call this process a recount. Never. Because the legal requirements for a recount have not been met. So don't label it a recount. Call it something else. Like OC said, you're restarting a count. It's not a recount. You're just restarting the count. But all 10 returning officers have declared. So unless somebody don't understand what the law is, if all 10 officers have declared the results, there's nothing called a recount, a starting of the count, because they counted it. So on what grounds are we having a recount? Did the CEO say that based on his statements of poll, the government presiding officers, and based on Mingo's statement of the poll or publication of his result, there's discrepancy? No. You have six commissioners, one more, seven being the chairman. They could have sat and say, okay then, let us see what GECOM has. It's that simple. And says Gunraj and all them simply peruse the statements of poll. Robeson Ben says Gunraj, BBCD, because they're the ones who said that the elections are rigged. Okay, fine. Or they believe that something is wrong. So if that's the case, the three of you and the three APNA commissioners, along with the chairman, sit in a room and have the statements of poll presented to you and read them all. Tally from there, and then tell us that Mingo in Region 4 has been deemed to have changed numbers, altered numbers. Can you do that? They did do that? Did they suggest that? No. So there's nothing called any recount here. If you want to go back to the ballot boxes, then you will have a forensic audit of the boxes. No recount here. You should start from ground zero, from scratch, if that's what you want. No simple counting anything. Since the elections were flawed, since there would have been a lot of discrepancies, since there would have been the opaqueness, you can't see the processes, it's the shady business going on here, the thief, the rig, since they did all of that. Since they were not transparent, since they were underhand business going on, and since they thief, simple. Open the ballot boxes, open every single envelope, and scrutinize it. Then come back and talk to us publicly. I hope some of you would, about who cheated and who didn't cheat. There's no simple counting of anything here. Everything has to be scrutinized in detail. And may I inform you yet again, that the only person, when you finish all you have to do at your polling stations or wherever at counting those boxes, the only person who has something to say regarding an announcement is the returning officer. Then it goes to the CEO. So the same process, unless you're going to throw this person out the window too and make another law. Get as mad as you want. The law is for all of us to abide by. Nothing called any simple recount is happening. Because I would like to think that if Mingo cheated, then we have to expose everything that happened. And if GECOM cheated, then everybody in GECOM has to be dealt with. So open every document. Scrutinize every single piece of ballot. All of them. Do you know who should be blamed fully for what happened in this election? And most of you don't want to talk about it. I don't have an issue talking about it. You could hide your head and stand all you want. The judge who ruled that an electoral list, Guyana has about 750,000 plus people in it, just about. And a judge would actually sit and say that you should have an election held with an electoral list with 660,000 names on it. That makes sense to you all? So over 80% of Guyana's population is within voting age. That makes sense to you? Do you understand that even the same observers, all you said the world saw, come back now. The world saw they cheated. The same world said. The same world, oh yes, now them said something was terribly wrong with Guyana. For you to have 670,000 names on a list in a country that has just about 750,000 people. Imagine that. Imagine the same foreigners who said that elections were so bad, said you have one major problem to deal with here. How can you have 660,000 names on a list in a country where you have 750,000 people on average? Good. So since we have hundreds of thousands of names on a list, that could have been anybody popping up from anywhere, including those who died. Good. Forensic audit. Let me see if APNU AFC and the PPP Civic could handle every single ballot box, every single envelope being opened and scrutinized in detail, bit by bit. Nothing else. It is not a recount. And that process should not even take place without there being the CEO's report, the Commissioner's report, the Chairman report, the Chancellor of the Judiciary. You don't jump hurdles here. And I hasten to say, that given the result, whatever comes out of that process, anybody found to have been guilty of doctoring, tampering with this process should be jailed for life. And if you ask me, should be put to death given what the embarrassment you cause this country. My case, my presentation is over. I would not give much more of my energy to this electoral garbage because we have leaders in this country, including commissioners, who are adding to the law without there being proper legislative processes followed. GECOM doesn't have to reveal anything to anybody. I just told you that, okay, let me say it before I go. It is simply a matter of common sense, which I would like to presume many people have lacked severely today. It is simple. If you have a presiding officer, that presiding officer would have already given the candidates statements of poll. The presiding officer would have already given the CEO statements of poll. The presiding officer would have already published statements of poll. GECOM doesn't have to come back and show you anything because the parties already have it. Those who have candidates present. You all are asking for things like parrots. You just say people talk because most of you who talk in here are absolutely ignorant, supporting PPP and nonsense. You are parrots with no sense. Why must GECOM display something that you already have? I am saying, be it David Granger, Barrett Jagdeo, Irfan Ali, Mingo, whoever you are, anybody, after this process is finished, has been found guilty of tampering with the electoral process, you should be put to death. I ain't talking about jail, you should shoot you all. You should be put before a firing squad. Because you've brought this country into a disgraceful situation. All of y'all should be dealt with, whoever it is found. Both sides. Let's see how that'll work. I thank you for your time. I appreciate the time we spent together. The one who wants to call me to discuss the matters, you could call. But I give you the grounds on which I speak. Phyllis Jordan, you should say nothing else to this entire process because all your other candidates with you are gone. All your other party people left you by yourself. You want an unbiased preacher? Thank you all for your time. Goodbye.